Sketchcraft is recorded in front of a live internet audience and supported by listeners like you. Please be sure to leave a review on iTunes, like and share our Facebook page, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All links can be found at sketchcraft.com. That's Sketchcraft, C-R-A-F-T, the name of the podcast.com. Remember, every little bit counts and it all helps to grow the show. Thanks. Welcome to Sketchcraft, the podcast for art, games, and process junkies. I'm Rob Duenas, full-time illustrator and graphic artist Esquire. This is an unedited podcast, which will probably contain strong language, so listener discretion is advised.
I think it'd be cool if you made a tutorial on how you, which I mean, we can talk about this on the podcast, but I'm just saying it now to see your idea of it, of how you scan in the line art and then how you set it up to be reprinted to color it. Would you ever do that?
Well, I mean...
Because, or even if you did like a little quick step-by-step written down and then gave it to me, because I'd like to know. I mean, I know you've told me, but unless I have a step-by-step thing, it's hard for me to follow.
What, colorizing your lines?
Well, how you do it, where you scan it in, and then you reset your settings, and then you reprint it out to be, inked or colored, or that whole process, because I get kind of lost because sometimes I don't understand the wordage or the settings you say, or, I have to have like a little printout and look at it.
What happens when I write it down and you still can't find things? Like, what then?
I'll ask Jessica. She'll know all the verbiage. But, I mean, I want to be able to, because that's my next goal, is to get a printer, like the one you have, so I can just print it out. And because every time, I try to, obviously you can't ink the pencils and color them because then it just smears. And so that'd be my next goal, is to try that.
Because here's the thing, right? Like, I used to try to learn from books. And even with full color, like After Effects, I was going to learn After Effects from a book. Even with full color books where everything's highlighted and here's what you do, I would still be like, but that isn't there. You know what I'm saying, dude? Like, and really it didn't come from the fact that it wasn't there. It's that I just didn't have familiarity enough with the software to really understand what the fuck it was they're talking about. So like, for me to spend, a day or two photographing everything, making this tutorial, I gotta be honest, people are still gonna be like, I don't know how to do it. So what I try to do, right, and what I've done for myself is I go, what am I attempting to accomplish? I want to print out my lines and color them with markers. Now, no one taught me how to do this, right? So you just start logically, Brandon, you got to start using a little bit of logic, right?
Right.
So you say, okay, I can do that at one. I can scan in, right? I have my pencils. I could just print them out as is. What happens when I print out as is and I put some marker over it? What does that look like? Kind of looks like shit. Or maybe it doesn't look like shit. You know what I mean? Maybe you have to complete a full one to find out what about it didn't work. That's what I had to do. I did that several different times. You know what I mean? I'd fill whole commissions when someone would go, I don't really like that one you did, right? I took the I didn't really like what you did hit to figure out the process, right?
Right.
The person who bought it didn't give a shit, but half the other people, well, that really wasn't your best one. It wasn't bad, Rob, But, really, like, I know. And this other one you did was really good. Well, there's a reason for that. So I have two basic processes. One where I print out grayscale lines and one where I tint the lines. And tinting the lines just means going in, hitting colorize, and finding the right kind of color you like. Like I tend to like a pinkish purple. And then I have to figure out how my printer is going to interpret that coloration. because I tend to use the fast settings on my printer, but not everyone has fast settings. If I didn't have fast settings, you'd go, well, I can't do it because I don't have that special kind of printer. No, what I would do is just turn the opacity down on only the colorized parts of the image. You know what I mean? To turn the saturation to the point in which I like it. I'd have to print it out and print it out. Let me try some markers on that. Print it out. Let me try some markers on that. And that is really, Brandon, the only way, because you can buy the same inks, the same printer, the same Photoshop, and get a completely different result. This is why when, you hold up a magazine, you can hold up 6 different issues and find that there's color fluctuations, right? If they didn't calibrate the printer per every hundreds or so hits, then you're going to get different colors of calibration, but most people can't tell because they're looking at it one issue at a time.
Right.
So
when you scan in your pencils, right, and then do you print out, ink it, and then rescan it, and then print out for colors, or is it just ink to colors?
Well, what I do is I print it out, and then I color it, but the inks are never going to be a rich black, right? They're going to be like a dull kind of black. And then what I do is once I add in the white highlights, then I figure out where I want to put true blacks to pop out the contrast. Like if I want to go back and re-outline it, if I want to cover up some of the white that isn't like like someone goes, I don't know how to get the white all perfect on the edge. Well, it wasn't perfect when I laid the white down. You know what I mean? I just filled the edges in with fucking black, dude. Like, you know what I mean? And added a little bit of Copic color to the end to kind of erase some of the line. And then it looks sharp,
Right.
Or it isn't sharp and you're just seeing whatever you want to see. Half the time, people see what they want to see, Brandon.
Right.
And then when you do it, you go, this doesn't look the same. It's all in your head. It's, it doesn't look like I did it. It looks like you did it, So you got to get to the point where what you're producing impresses you. And there's could be a multitude of other reasons for that have very little to do with the tutorial. And I mean, I am recording this, so I'll probably make this like a bonus episode or some shit.
Right.
So, but I'm just trying to say that it's very difficult, like I can say exactly what I did, and I got a 100-page PDF that shows every step. I got 2-hour-long podcasts. I got even videos where I'm doing it in real time, and it's like, well, I don't know how to do that. And I'm like, at some point, it really isn't about replicating what I did. It really comes down to what it is you're trying to accomplish. And if you know your tools enough, you can start to just systematically whittle it down into a formula or a process that achieves the result.
Yeah, that'll work for me. And I mean, that kind of goes back to what you said when you did your top 10 things or whatever it is that they don't teach you in school. One of them being, what are you trying to accomplish before
they do not teach critical thinking because you can't. Like there's no way in Western education, right, to evaluate someone's competency unless it comes down to like very specific. He knows where this tool palette is. He knows where that tool palette is. That doesn't mean that under stress or in the middle of the creative process you're going to remember any of that shit or even know what to do with it. Like, hey, I know this is pencil, but I hand this pencil to, my girlfriend, and this pencil produces a completely different result than what I do with it,
Right.
And then I could look at Jim Lee moving his pencil around and try to move it in the same motions, but it has nothing to do with. But people think because a computer has options and clicks and stuff that it can just achieve a result by clicking. And no, it's still a pencil,
right.
And that's where like the hopelessness comes in for people when they actually realize that and they make the connection. And I've seen this in school. They'll give up. Well, I'm never going to get that good. The realization of what's in front of you as an artist, of what you're trying to create magic on a page and turn that magic into money.
Right.
And it's almost a form of alchemy in a way, right? And the minute you realize how almost impossible it is to do that, or how incredibly difficult it is to do that, people give up.
Yeah.
And then what you have to do is admit to yourself that it's not possible. And I mean completely, it really kind of isn't possible in many ways. And then you say, well, what am I trying to achieve with this? You know what I mean? And you have to like whittle it back down to very specific things. You can't allow your mind to be overwhelmed Because I know what's going to happen. You're going to start to print out, and you're going to be thinking about that big piece that I did for you, and how I did all these other things, right? And then you start thinking about Comic-Con, and then when you're there, you want to sell. You see how this turns into a grand scheme,
Right.
right? And you've got this whole like, and then but that one con comes up in 2 weeks, and then in time I have to get this, and then it's not looking like that, and I don't really know what to do, and I'm just going to ask Rob, or I'm not going to do anything, or I'm just going to do what I know how to, and then you go right back to what you did before.
Right.
And or you give up, one or the other, or you go play a game, or you ignore it, or some other shit, you know. And people turn that, I don't know if you want to call it feature creep, but turn that process into like, well, it didn't work out for me, you know, or it was hard. And what you were trying to achieve actually wasn't hard, but you wrap that around, you know, like a fucking layered truffle of life, dude. You know, it's like a layer cake. Like, yeah, I'm just talking about the creamy center, and you're talking wrapping it around a fucking burrito. You know what I mean? Like, so it isn't difficult to take any sketch you have now and to print it out on a printer. It doesn't have to be 11 by 17, dude. Matter of fact, you know, I recommend not, because that's just going to eat up markers. To print it out, you know, even just a head, you know, and try it on grayscale. Colorize the lines red, make it a little pink. See how the skin tones work. Some things work better for certain characters, you know.
Right.
And that's where, like, when I test some stuff, I'm like, well, you know, when I'm doing the suaves, I kind of like have to, because I have production and I have to get through, they say 40 or 50 of these things. I can't be going and colorizing all of Blanca's lines to be, say, purplish green, right, or bluish green. And then go, and I got to turn them all one thing. So I got to figure out what works best. So I do the purple on Blanca, and I'll do a pencil on Blanca on shit paper really quick. Right? I put over a few things, and I see what works for me if I have a question, because the minute I start adding green to red, I can end up with a really weird coloration. You know what I mean? I can end up with mud or this like pinkish orange thing underneath. That's where like I understanding like, when I put green over red, anytime I put green and red together, you can end up with Christmas. Like, it's just a T-shirt thing I learned, you know?
Right. So that's just the whole visual of it.
I don't know how to put that into tutorial. I wouldn't even, would it be a box that pops out? Oh, also be aware, like, even if I said that, people would be like, well, I can learn color theory too. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, I mean, not all at once. You know what I mean? Like, you got to start working at it in a modular way. One little thing at a time.
Right.
You know,
and I'm totally cool with trial and error, which, I mean, a lot of people, it seems like they're not willing to just try and fail because nobody likes to fail. But I mean, everything that I've self-taught myself with Illustrator, I mean, Photoshop, you know, it's all been trial and error. I try it fucks up. I just Control, you know, Z, go back and try it again, try something different. I mean, so it's another thing from when you're telling me, you know, just try it, try this, try that. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I might as well. I mean, it's not like I'm sitting here at a desk job and someone's over my shoulder with an art director saying, oh, you need to get this right away. I have time. There's no reason to not try things and experiment with it and see what I can get good at and not good at. So, you know, I'm all for trying it. But it seems like a lot of people I talk to, other artists, they just get too frustrated when they can't get that end result quickly. It's like, you know, take your time. Why not just work at it? But I see that sometimes when I color friends' art and stuff, and I'll add a few extra seam lines or wrinkles on a mask or something, and I know they don't like that because maybe they didn't think of it.
Well, I don't even know if you could think about it. I mean, you know, like, I don't even know. That's where it's like, and that's where, like, when you want to, say, collect all that stuff, right? Some people are pretty good at it. Say, oh, I collect all that information. I type it up. I make this little thing. I make a nice Deviant tutorial. I get 10,000 views. Gotta be honest, dude. I'd rather spend that time creating something than explaining how I did it. You know what I mean? Like, right. I'd rather spend that time making something that entertains than something that informs, because I can talk about it.
Wait, baby.
You know?
Yeah.
And do I recognize that the majority of people that I speak to will not be able to interpret what I say, yeah. But the majority, the other half, won't get it, whether it's in a tutorial, whether it's in a DVD combo, whatever. I could spend all my time making that, and become the guy that how to draw fantasy dragons at Barnes and Noble, you know.
Right.
But I would rather just make real. But you can see how generic those things look, right? And they're
Oh
designed
yeah.
that way because you could never, if you put up if I would just put up my best fucking thing I could think of for a dragon, you know what I mean? That would be impossible, one, to put into a book, and two, like it would be too intimidating for people to try. Like they put simple things in, not because that guy can't do better, but because you want to feel like, oh, I can achieve that.
Right.
My stuff is really there for the cat like myself. Even when I was a kid, I didn't care if I couldn't achieve it then. I wanted to learn the processes of achieving that,
Right.
And I just wanted to hear it straight from cats that actually did it. I mean, in Nomon, they those kinds of places, they do a good job of providing that, but at the same time, um, it's like 2 hours, and I'll get maybe one from a guy someday. You know what I mean? And they're like 60, $80 a pop sometimes. So, like I said, I went and bought I got a refund once for my school, and I bought when Nomon first came out, I bought 3-4 grand worth of those DVDs, physical DVDs. I got them all right here, and I got to tell you, they really haven't helped much. The only ones that helped out were the fundamental perspective one.
Right.
That's it. Like even the guy, look, I took a sketch, I did markers, and then I scanned it in, and I was in Photoshop, and I'm looking at him doing it, and I don't understand how the process. And I really should have just started coloring fucking marker sketches, But I didn't really, even at the time, have a complete grasp of Photoshop. It wasn't until I started working in T-shirts that I would start to have to use a lot of different tools and tricks, and I'd work my way around because there was quotas and deadlines. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know how to infuse. So either A, I could not do a podcast and not explain all this, or I could say, well, how can I approach it? And that just comes back down to every time I'm going to tell someone over and over again, well, what are you attempting to achieve? What did you do? How many times did you do it before you rigor? You know what I mean? Like I tried it 100 different ways, it wasn't working. Well, let me look at what you printed out. Well, those lines are really dark. Like if it's looking muddy, print out the lines at half the opacity, a fourth of the opacity. Figure out how your printer is operating. So you're achieving the result. I can't, when I'm doing the watercolors, I literally have to use the transfer paper now. You know what I mean? Because printing out onto boards, even though I found printers that could do it, would break the rollers half the time because of the illustration board, or they end up with scuffs, or the shit would fucking bleed, and I just got tired of all that,
Yeah.
So now they take twice as long. Some guys were asking me, how come you don't do as many saucies now? And I'm like, well, because it takes twice as long now,
Right.
And for that kind of money, I'd rather do whatever I want to do, so I'm investing the extra time on myself, or B, charged for the amount it would take. And most people, don't want to spend $360 on a piece of watercolor paint, which is fucking crazy to me, considering that I could easily charge $3 grand. When people go, why don't you go for Marvel? I said, well, you understand that the second, let's say I did that $360 turns into $3,600. You realize that, right? Nothing's gonna get cheaper,
Right.
Well, then I would be able to go buy it in a Comicbook, you know what I mean? At a store, really, with the crappiest printing you can imagine, and a bunch of words put all over my art, and it probably cropped, and then and by the way, so just to wrap all this up, I've seen a lot of the files. I get the direct files from the damn site when I was at my former job. Those comics are printed really bad, dude. They don't look like how they're supposed to look.
Right.
When people wonder why the Ultimates 3 is all dark, it's because they went through a shitty printer, probably out of China, and everything got fucked up. You know what I mean? It just doesn't look like that, So I can't even guarantee that you're seeing it the way it's meant to be seen. So I don't know, dude. You know what I mean? I don't know what people want. They want free and quick. I'm just not the guy to hang out with. If you want, I want to be able to replicate exactly what you do. Well, I didn't. I really just want to instill in the fact that I'm not, some genius guy where I know everything, oh, I know how to do this. I really don't know how to do it. I've learned the process of figuring out how to do it.
Right. I mean, you're more, maybe it's a bad analogy, but you're more just like a chef, you know the basic ingredients, but then, you just kind of mix match and see what works best for you when you're in the process of making it, and it turns out, good. I mean, it's just, you kind of just mix and play with it. It's not like I mean, I know you have a set guidelines of how you like to do things, but I know a lot of times it's, you try this, it works. You try this, it don't work. You go back and you figure out how to make it work.
And sometimes you're trying to make a beef Wellington, right? And you're trying to make one of the hardest things there is. And that means sometimes some things you're going to have to make 1,000 of before you get right, Like,
right.
I mean, even now I question every process. When I have downtime, I'm usually spending it not making art for me. People go, do you make art for you? I go, no, I generally take something I already did and I try different ways to accomplish it to see if there's an easier way. That's how I spend a lot of my free time. Like, I'm not over there like, oh, now I'll go draw a fucking Mega Man, because then I got to sit down and figure out Mega Man and come out with my, you know what I mean? I could take something I've already done and go, well, I know how I made that. What if I did it like this? What if I did it like that? And there's a ton of that shit lying around here, dude. You know what I mean? There's tons of failed effects. Like when I did that Hawkeye and Hawkgirl, there was this one where I just printed out chicken scratch and trying to do it all like with brush work, and this shit looked like a retarded fucking, it was really bad, dude. That there's all sorts of stuff lying around here that I just toss out because it's like won't work. I got stuff right here I did the other day with Blanca where I was trying different like color tests. I printed out like a lime orange, green, to see what would work. What if I just did it in pencil and printed out, like I did one drawing where I inked a bit of it. I only inked the outlines, and then I did one where I tried to even add solid blacks. And I did parts of it where it just had pencil. And so then I printed out like an all lime green and try to figure out what that'll look like, maybe, because I thought, well, if I just pencil it and then I do my inking only with the Copic stage, then maybe, you know what I mean? I'm not doing shit twice. I can cut out inking, right?
Right.
But what I found out is that when I print out the lines in pencil, some things that are definitive, like mouths and teeth and stuff, I have to do in color. And it's easier that those lines are more solid. You know what I mean? Like some things just work better when I print it out, so I don't have to... I'm not trying to fucking make it all perfect in the back end. So, and it's hard for me to ink at full blast when I'm in a color mode too. You got to figure out what's working for you. Like when I'm coloring, I just want to think about color. I don't want to think about, okay, I colored it, now I can start inking it too. Those are two different parts of my mind.
Right.
Throwing some blacks back over my piece once I print it out. And then you could print it out and you put your final ink blacks next to that printout black, and you go, wow, it's not that different, Then someone will go, well, Rob, that's a printing of your stuff. You're not actually, no, fuck you. I drew the whole thing. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like anytime someone does a painting, like you're not getting the one little piece that there ever was. You know what I mean? Like you're getting, they did it once, they blew it up, they traced it over, they did some stuff. Maybe they transferred it. I don't know. You know what I mean? Maybe they printed it out and they epoxied it to a substrate, put a piece of laminate, and then painted over and built off that. You're getting them putting all the effort into making you this art,
Right.
And the only people I've ever heard complain about that are people who've never bought art before, and they have like this image in their head of how the process is. And I've only come across that twice, maybe, out of the hundreds,
Yeah.
So I don't really worry about that shit. I worry about that. I just want to know that, when people see the pencil and they see the color, there's a significant difference, bro.
Right.
And part of it too is the freedom to know I can make a mistake. Half the time people are just, they're scared stiff into even trying stuff because it might ruin the piece and they'll have to start over.
Right.
Think about how many times you've done that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried if I fuck something up. I've just wasted time,
Right.
But I don't have to redraw it. At least I have that part worked out. Now, when I'm watercoloring, I realize that I just accepted that, well, I could fuck this up. You know what I mean? Like, chances are I can mess this up a pretty good bit, which is why I do the color stuff, the color guide stuff kind of ahead of time and everything, And people have said, well, your stuff's looking more bright than it did before. And I'm like, well, I'm more comfortable with brighter colors for some reason, When I start muting things down, it can turn to mud and I get a little like, I don't know. You know what I mean? And you got to figure out what your comfortability is, and then I can sort of branch out. And well, I'll try this muted, I'll try that, whatever. But it generally doesn't matter. You know, you just make compelling work. Do you care if a Scotty Young drawing is muted or bright? Does it really matter, you know? Like,
nah.
No, it doesn't, dude. It might be a personal little quirk or preference, but it doesn't matter, you know?
Right.
All right, man, let me save this shit.
Yeah.
Bonus cast. Skechcraft is recorded in front of a live internet audience and supported by listeners like you. Please be sure to leave a review on iTunes, like and share our Facebook page, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All links can be found at sketchcraft.com. That's Skechcraft, C-R-A-F-T, the name of the podcast.com. Remember, every little bit counts and it all helps to grow the show. Thanks.